HMR here. There was a commenter who asked a question. What do you say to somebody with BPD that rejects totally your idea when you're telling them, or what you believe, when you're telling them that you think they have BPD? Well, then what would you tell what would you tell the borderline? Well, it's an interesting question because it sounds oh so simple, doesn't it? Like you're telling somebody that you think they have BPD, and most of the time when people do that in any relationship type, it doesn't really go very well. It can lead to the person with BPD feeling triggered, and it can really leave you frustrated and trying harder and harder to get them to hear you. And you might know, in a sense, right, if they have all the patterns and you know what you're going through and you've checked it all out online, but still, it's not recommended that people go tell people, well, I think you have BPD, because it's just another step in codependent rescuing and trying to fix and trying to get heard by them, and you need them to change for this to work. That's true, you really do, but you really have no kind of right. It's over your limits and boundaries, and over maybe they don't have boundaries, but it's kind of like disrespectful to someone else in a way to tell them that you think they have BPD because you're trying hard to get them to change so the relationship could work out. Because what I would highly advocate for people to, when you're realizing this, and they may well have the patterns of BPD, and you may well be right, it's kind of like that's a time when it would be really more helpful to you to realize that the relationship isn't working out, isn't going to work out, whatever you've been going through, whatever now you've been looking this up and you realize this, you're trying to tell the person that they have BPD, that you think has BPD, and they just reject you outright. What else is there to say? Well, only in codependent rescuing and trying to fix do people try over and over and over again. And then if you can get the person to even like consider it for a second, then the next thing is people want to rush them into therapy. But this doesn't work, because if a person is going to realize that they have the issues or the traits of BPD, or go get assessed and find out for sure, and then get into therapy, they have to want to do that. They have to want to do that for themselves. So I think this question, though it sounds really simple, is a good one for me to just think about a little here to say, maybe what's the obvious? But so many people with codependency can't, you're in that betrayal bonded relationship and you don't want to let go. You want to fix them and you want to change them and you want to rescue them. Well, if you're still in that space, then you really need to know that you can't do those things. So the harder you try, the more frustrated you're going to get. Probably the angrier the person that may well have BPD, or you're suggesting to them has BPD, the more that they're going to you're going to end up arguing and fighting about it, because you can't change somebody else. So when you're recognizing that for yourself, why do you think, if this is something you've been through or you can relate to, why do you think that you would ask a question of like, what else can I say if they reject it? I told them I think they have BPD, but they won't listen. Now what'll I do? Well, really, it's a time to look at what's really going on. It's a time to take care of yourself. It's a time to really realize that these relationships, more often than not, don't work out. And if somebody isn't even diagnosed with BPD, but they have all these traits, you've gone online, you can resonate with so many people are saying with their experience with somebody with BPD or suspected BPD, then you have to start maybe getting into your own therapy to know, why is it that you want to change this, or think you can, or think you can fix it, because you got to have this person so bad in your life. And that's something that is over people's limits and boundaries. It's unhealthy. It's unhealthy coming from a person with codependency, or counterdependency, by the way, or a mix of both, towards somebody that you think has BPD. And I mean, how happy would you be if somebody ran up to you and said, I think you have codependency? Because a lot of people hear that in my videos or whatever. My experience is it helps many people, but many people are like, oh, I'm not codependent. What are you talking about? So what am I supposed to do next? Like if that was somebody in my life, make a decision as to whether I think that this is a healthy enough relationship with that person. And I probably wouldn't think that. And well, now especially, maybe, decades ago, I might have been in someone's position with this, that so many people out there, it's really important not to tell them, but everybody tells them nowadays. And why do you do that? Because you're recognizing something, and more people are usually pretty accurate about that than wrong, but you don't know for sure. But when you're doing that, you're already kind of knowing to some degree or other that something's really wrong in the relationship, that maybe you've been really hurt in the relationship, that maybe it's on off. This person maybe gives you the silent treatment often, or on and off, now and again, or whatever the case. Or they rage and scream and yell at you, and you have these jade conversations and arguments and fights, and you want to tell them why. Well, because I think you have BPD. And then that person goes, I don't know what you're talking about, because I think you have BPD. And it just goes nowhere. And it creates, the person that you're saying that you think they have BPD is going to probably get triggered by that. It's not your fault they get triggered, but then they're going to have a big response. And then they're kind of never going to let that go. So I think when people recognize what the patterns are and what you're really dealing with, that's when you really you should reach out for professional help yourself to ascertain why you're trying to tell somebody something that they don't want to hear, and they're not going to believe you, they're not going to do anything about it, but you want to keep telling them, well, what should I say next? I got to convince them they got BPD so they can go and get help and change so this relationship can work, because I love them so much. And I know people do feel like they love them so much, but they're not loving you back. So really, don't want to go on too long with this. Just simply doing this video to say, not recommended that you tell them. If you tell them, way more often than not, they're just going to argue with you and probably never let it go and never let you forget that you said that, especially if they outright reject it. And even if they don't outright reject it, once you know what's going on and you suspect they have BPD, why are you hanging around? Because it's not going to work. And you're not going to rescue them, and you're not going to fix them. And why does that feel so intense? Like you've got to do that. And you've got to try harder. And this relationship has to work out. It's a self-abandonment of many people with codependency. And by the way, some people with codependency can also experience counterdependency. So everything I say about codependency doesn't just relate to codependency. It can also be about somebody who really manifests some similar things to do with codependency, but like in a more restrained or not as forward engaged way. It can be counterdependency. But there's really nothing that you can do except feel a very powerful sense of OMG and oh no, and what does this really mean, and that a relationship is not going to be viable when you figure this out. But of course, so many people with codependency can't stop there, and that's why I would recommend that you talk to someone about it. And like a professional, I'm out here to work with people that are ready to delve into that. But you need to understand that all the reasons that why you feel like you can't live without this person, that you might not feel like you can live with very well, it's like now you're going to try harder and harder. You're going to ignore yourself, ignore the pain, ignore whatever the dynamics are in the relationship, and you're just going to keep trying to fix it to change them. Well, with all due respect, why do codependents think they have the right to fix these people or try to get them to fix them in therapy, fix themselves? Why do you think you have the right to try to change somebody so they'll be like who you want them to be? Because the real tragedy at this point is you're already realizing they're not who you thought they were. And then you can keep loving them, but you're loving the potential. You're loving the experience you had of them in maybe an idealization or a honeymoon phase. They're not coming back to being who you thought they were. It's not wise to do this, but people do it all the time. If you tell the person you think they have BPD and they reject that outright, what do you say next? Well, I would advocate say nothing next. In other words, leave it alone, educate yourself about BPD, and realize what you've gotten yourself into and you didn't know, but realize what you're dealing with, and then think about what you need to do for you rather than how can you rescue and fix them, because you're not going to get that done and you're not going to change them either. So how about thinking about maybe what you might benefit from changing in your life, your idea about relationships and love, because once you think that you need to tell somebody that you're pretty sure that they have BPD, the relationship is probably already being experienced, the dynamic in ways that suggest that like you need it to change, or it's just going to keep hurting you. You're going to keep losing yourself. So that might be a point at which people need to start thinking about, wow, I don't know how I'm going to let go of this person, and I love them so much, but I don't think they're who that I fell in love with. And maybe it's time to think about, like I said, getting help to try to start to process, is the relationship viable or not? Because usually the answer is no at that point.